What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the next episode of Arena Goat Talk. On this episode, I have one of the hardest hitting Chicago Bears. This is my favorite team, by the way. Hardest hitting players ever in the arena in NFL for the Chicago Bears, who stepped over to arena football and became Coach of the Year. His mark made a name for himself in the arena game as a coach as well. All right, but on this episode, I have Coach Doug Plank. How you doing today, sir?
I'm doing great. Can't be doing any better. Love it. Love life, and I've got a really good, nice family, and couldn't be better.
Appreciate you taking the time out again. I want everybody to kind of know your story, and we've had our battles a couple times when I was with the Preds, and you enjoyed it. So, it's always good to kind of reminisce and share stories when it's all said and done.
Well, you know what, though? You guys were the monsters of the league. I don't care what you say. Every time you're getting ready to play your team, look out, man. You better start getting ready for some pain, getting knocked out, getting hit. It was going to happen. And I just love the consistency at way every single time we played you guys. It was just a knockdown, drag out battle. And it takes a lot of determination to get to play to that level every single week.
Yeah, those are some good battles. Us, you guys, and Tampa, and then New Orleans had some nice little battles with us. I felt like we had the best division in arena football.
Yeah, you learn. You never graduate. I mean, I graduated from high school and college and a couple schools, that I went and got some extra classes done in Chicago. But, the bottom line is you never stop learning. You think you graduated, okay, yeah, I got my degree, blah, blah, blah. No, there's so much in life that you have to learn. And maybe you're taking a real estate class or, something along those lines, contractor's license. You're always learning something. And, even if it's, it hurts. It hurts to learn sometimes. But you become a better person and you say, I'm not going to make that mistake again. And there's no crime in making a mistake unless you do it over and over and over again. And those are the kind of players I had to say, goodbye. I can't have this multiple same mistake made over and over.
Yeah, definitely. So where are you from originally?
Grew up in a suburb of Pittsburgh, 18 miles outside of Pittsburgh. Always enjoyed driving through that town because half the time you couldn't see where you were going because those huge steel mills, that black billowing smoke was coming out of those large, areas where they just were making the steel. And oh my gosh, it was a blue collar area. So okay. There was nobody that had any money. You lived nickel to nickel. And but you know what, though? You appreciated everything. Everything was an appreciation, thankfulness. And not like the world we live in now where there's the expectation, gimme, 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 gimme. No, you become a better person by working for whatever you get.
Definitely. So coming up, were you always, on the defensive side of the ball, or, as you're growing up, you played a little, you dibbled and dabbled in other positions?
I did. I started playing when I was 9 years old, and all those Pee-wee leagues, and they were all through Pennsylvania because, once again, it's a blue collar area. Everybody loved football in that area. There was, a lot of players from Western Pennsylvania either went to Penn State, Pitt, or Ohio State. That was all you could do. That was a form of release and enjoyment. Running into other people. When I played. And, the Steelers, I mean, that was their moniker. You know what? They said, come on the field, guys. We might not win the game, but we're going to beat you up. And just, you learned how to take that mentality and say, oh my gosh, we might not win, but we could still win. We could still laugh afterwards and say, man, look at these guys crawling off the field. We took it to them today. And that was an attitude that I really, frankly, carried right on to Ohio State. Some things you don't really anticipate, though. For example, the first day I was there, I had never been on AstroTurf. I didn't even know what it was. And I know just to reach down and touch it, it was like very gnarly. And, I later, got a skin burn by falling on the turf, but I also was hit the very first day I got there at Ohio State, and I tore a cartilage and partially tore a ligament. The second day I'm getting operated on. I got surgery. So what a great start. And, then because, it wasn't like Ohio State didn't have some players. Oh my gosh, when I started coming back my sophomore year, man, it was a tough battle, even to get on the field, even in special teams.
Mm-hmm. All right. So talk about how your journey from Ohio State to Chicago.
I'll just say this. I never, ever thought that I was going to even be offered a scholarship. Let me start there. We didn't play on a very good team. We didn't have a winning record in the 3 years that I was there. So I never expected to get a scholarship. But what I did was, when you don't get, no one sends you a letter, then you start sending letters to them. It's like, your Christmas is coming up, okay? And you don't expect any gifts. Well, who are you going to write to? You're going to write to Santa Claus. And I used to do that every year. Santa Claus, Mr. Santa Claus, this is what I need. And, whether it was Army men or toys or whatever, I did that every year. Well, I said, why doesn't it work for college football? So my high school year, I wrote letters to Joe Paterno, then the head coach at Penn State. Dear Coach Paterno, I really, 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 really want to come to Penn State. Now, how could you read a letter like that and say, man, who is this kid? Well, he really wants to come to Penn State. So the season's over. It's almost Christmas. It's sort of like our last day of school in that particular year. And who shows up at my high school, Norwin High School, but Joe Paterno? And he goes, Doug, we've already offered all the college scholarships to all the kids. He goes, but I had to come and meet the guy that wrote these letters to me. He said, I can't. I said, Coach, let me say something. Could you just say, if someone asked you about me, could you just say you were interested in me? Darn if the next day there was an article in the Pittsburgh paper, Joe Paterno visits Doug Plank at Norwin High School, and he is very, very interested in him. And the next week, I get a call from Ohio State. They read that article. They said, was Coach Paterno right back to your high school, Doug, and came to visit you? And I go, absolutely. That was exactly what happened. They go, well, we'd like to offer you a scholarship. And that's the way it was. That's how I got to Ohio State, because Joe Paterno took the time to come to my high school, say, hey, Doug, I got to meet you, shook hands, went on his way. But that was in the newspaper the next day that he had come. When you're the head coach in a city or the state like back then, you couldn't just go sneaking around the state. When you showed up at places, man, people knew who you were. And so that's how I got to Ohio State. And like I said, my freshman year was done the first day after I got there. But you know what? That brought on some determination for me. I had never really, done a lot of weight training and stuff like that. I started doing all that. This is still my freshman year. And, but you know what? Just like it is right now, Ohio State has great players. And there's a lot of other schools that have great players. But you know what? Playing with those guys every single day really brought me to a situation where if there was something that could happen to me later on, an opportunity, I could maybe get on television. I could start whatever. I was playing behind All-American players at Ohio State. So that's the cause. I started 5 games in my 3 years. 3 my sophomore year, 0 my junior year, and 2 my senior year. And fortunately, one of those games my senior year was against Northwestern. Listen, everybody wants to play against Northwestern in football. You're going to go out there, you're going to kill them. You're going to score touchdowns. You're going to get tackles. You're going to get interceptions. Not literally kill them. Just play very aggressively. And sure enough, if a Chicago Bears scout wasn't at that game, and that's how I got drafted. The next week, I'm back on the bench again because the guy I played that day, he had twisted an ankle the week before, but he was back. So it didn't matter how good you were. I got the Buckeye of the week that game because I made the most tackles and got in a turnover. It didn't matter. I was back on the bench. And I'm thinking, well, it was good while it lasted. Little did I ever think, in January that I was going to get a call from the Chicago Bears saying, "Hey, Doug, we just drafted you in the 12th round." Well, that's the good news. The bad news is I was the 291st player picked. And you know what? Most of the 12th rounders only lasted like 2 days in NFL training camps. Mm-hmm. Could you run? Could you jump? Could you hit somebody? If you couldn't do all those three, see you later. Good luck. Have a nice life. Fortunately, I could do all three of those. I loved hitting people, and I got their attention. And, so it was a good story after that.
Yeah. So is it true that they named the 46 defense after your number?
It's funny. My first 3 years, our head coach was Jack Pardee, really All-American, not an All-American. He was an All-Pro linebacker from the Rams, and he was all about blood and guts, just toughness. And so, for 3 years, Jack Pardee was there, and I led the team in tackles some of those years. As a safety, how does a safety lead the team in tackles? That means the other 10 guys, they're not interested in making tackles. If you want to go ahead and make the tackle, Doug, go ahead and make it. But we're not going to make it. We've got big. Sometimes I would come up there to fill holes I couldn't believe. I'm going, here comes the fullback and the running back's right behind him. And I'm going to be taking on the fullback at free safety. So I would chop down their legs or whatever, just make a pile. I learned how to really just defend myself and basically put people down. But when Buddy Ryan came my 4th year with the Bears, he looked at me and he goes, "Doug, you are no free safety." He said, "I watched the film on you." He says, "You're a linebacker." And he came down from the Minnesota Vikings. Bud Grant was up there as the head coach. Buddy Ryan was defense coordinator. He got the head coaching job in Chicago because Jack Pardee left and went to the Redskins or Washington at that time. And so, he moves me up to the middle linebacking position. And he said, "Doug, you're going to be the middle linebacker in this 46 defense." I still played free safety half the time, but the other half of the time, I was a middle linebacker on a 46 defense. And I had to learn plays. Buddy gave me a sheet of paper, and it was all the defenses we had against all the different formations, personnel, position on the field, and we practiced this all week. What was the likelihood? It was almost like artificial intelligence back then. No computers, but he just told me when he signed in this automatic front and coverage meant that every time they lined up, whoever they had in the game, what their down and distance was, where they were on the field would determine what call we would make. So I had to make that. I had to make that call. I was like the middle linebacker. Mike Singletary had just come into on our team, and Mike really was just trying to learn how to play as a Chicago Bear. So I was there calling plays for, I don't know, maybe 3 seasons, the 46 defense. It was an attack defense. You know what? We would call out the plays before they even happened. When we would start watching film now, not just to watch film and fall asleep. Every time we watched film, it was for a reason. Oh, look at these guys. They're in this formation, at this area on the field, in this personnel package. Teams are consistent. They run the same plays over and over and over again. If it's a running play, the linemen are leaning forward. If it's a passing play, they got that hand between their legs almost. They're going to back up. The body language is so incredible. And I watch television now. I can't believe it. The linemen are giving every play away. I'm saying pass, run. That's going to be a run. That's going to be a sweep. Look, one guard is leaning forward. The other one's leaning back. The one that's leaning back is going to pull and go around the end. It's going to be a sweep. I'm just telling you, little things like that. When I left, Mike Singletary came in and played the middle linebacker on 46 defense. But I really want to thank Buddy Ryan. I mean, for him to call that the 46 defense, it was above and beyond. It's almost like, I looked at it, I wasn't on the Super Bowl team in '85. I was already gone from the Bears. But you know what? Even though I wasn't there, I would rather have had the 46 defense after my jersey number and the position I played than go to the Super Bowl. You know why? Every year there's a Super Bowl. How many 46 defenses are there? One 46 defense. And you know what? They had to change the NFL rules because we were destroying quarterbacks and running backs and linemen even. It was attack. It was no more of this read and react. We didn't do that. That ball snapped, boom, you were gone, and nothing but good things. And I I wasn't around for the Super Bowl when they played the Patriots, but I was there in spirit.
Mm-hmm. So I already kind of got an idea, but just so you can vocalize it, kind of what was your mentality like as a player when you got your helmet on, you strapping it up, and you're going on the field? What's kind of like your mentality? What's going on in your head as a player?
You know what? I was one of those players. I had a switch. Everybody talks about what do you mean talking about a switch? Houses have switches, players don't. Oh yeah, they do. They're on the field, they're off the field. It's a totally different mentality. I don't mind hugging people off the field, tell them how great they are, how wonderful. I get on the field, I'm sorry, I don't care. I don't care about anybody in front of me. Look out. I'm going to hit them as hard as I can. 205 pounds, you got to run about 20 miles an hour. It's still going to hurt. Not maybe as much as a 250-pound linebacker, but you know what? 205 pounds, especially in a concentrated area. I just learned. I learned to have a chip on my shoulder too. I'd watch film, and I'd watch film by them running over some opposition, and I'm going to say to myself, "That's not going to happen to me. That's not going to happen to me." And anytime you walked onto that field, the fans at Soldier Field were awesome. We were never really a good team until '85, but that fan support was incredible. Every game, cheering for us when we're losing. I mean, who does that? Most places are going to get booed out of the stadium. But they loved hitting, aggressive, the Dick Butkus era. They loved aggressive football, and that was right up my alley. So, getting drafted in the 12th round, back then there was 6 preseason games. I was so aggressive and so determined to play with the Chicago Bears. I started lifting weights and all that sort of thing. By the time by the time our preseason was over, I was the starting free safety for the Chicago Bears as a 12th round draft pick. But I had to beat out 2 or 3 guys in front of me that were younger or veteran, they're more established, or even they were lower round draft picks. But you know what? Like I said, when that opportunity comes, that knock on the door, run through it, and give them everything you got.
Mm-hmm. Good, yeah. Like I said, that's Bears are my favorite. You just mentioned my favorite player, Dick Butkus, my favorite of all time.
I loved him and Gale Sayers. I mean, they although they didn't have great teams, they had the 2 best players I thought in the league. One on defense, one on offense. I mean, Gale Sayers is like, oh, he's going down. No, he wasn't going down. He was just stopping and changing direction. He was going to, oh my gosh, punt returns, kickoff returns, throw him a little dump pass out in the flat. And Dick Butkus was another just mean, bite him, kick him, whatever. And that sold really well in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, though, because you know what? That's what the Steelers did all the time. They weren't winning back then. Until they got Terry Bradshaw on the show, or got him on the team, I guess I should say. And, they couldn't score any points. They were tough on defense. But, I could have played more aggressively if we could have scored more points. Even with Walter Payton, who was my first roommate at Chicago Bears, he was awesome. He could do anything. He could run. He could pass. He could kick. He was like Mr. Run, kick, pass, cut, punt, and kick guy. He could do it all. And whenever we threw interceptions, which was all the time, he would always make the tackle. I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I saw him tackle some people. I'm so glad he's not a safety, because my butt would be on the bench. Walter was just a beast. I mean, and just brought it every play. And in spite of that, we still were not a very good team until later in the 80s. I got there in 75. Playing for the city of Chicago, I mean, it was great. You're playing against all those other tough teams back then, the Green Bay Packers, Detroit Lions. I mean, it was a battle every weekend. The problem was, if you made a mistake at free safety, like give up a touchdown pass or miss a tackle, you're probably going to lose the game. And I know you can appreciate this. How could I play really aggressive and no fears if I get somebody, or if I let somebody behind me, or I go for an interception, I don't get it, and it goes for a touchdown, the game's over. We've lost it. So everything I did, I had to make sure that everything ended where I made this contact. I don't want to miss a tackle. If there's an interception, I didn't have a lot of interceptions, although I had good hands. I played quarterback in high school. I used to throw and catch and all that sort of thing. Well, when you got to the Bears and you're playing free safety and you're the last guy of defense, I'm sorry, you're not trying to get turnovers. You're just trying to stop everybody you can, whether it's a running back or a receiver. A lot of times I'm running towards the ball and the receiver, and if I don't think I can get to the ball first, I just slowed down a little bit. I said, let him touch the ball and look out. And so many times, but you know what, though? Those players did not catch the ball. It was one huge explosion, and that's how people started getting me. I started getting noticed as a cheap shot artist, late hitter, even though I was the least penalized player on the team my first year. You know, how do you get to be the cheap shot artist of the league and then, you know, be the least penalized player on the team? Those are two things that just don't go together.
Definitely. So fast forward to coaching. So how were you first introduced to arena football?
You know what? So I was done. My career was over. I was a fast food franchisee for 20 years, and I started doing broadcasting of all things. I started being a radio broadcaster. You know, I was on a lot of TV interviews like this, and but in arena football, I knew Danny White from the Cowboys. He was coaching at that time for the Arizona Rattlers, and I was doing broadcasting, and for probably, I don't know, probably 5 or 6 years. And we're watching the game one time, and we're on the bus back to the hotel, which the Bears, you know, the Rattlers, Arizona Rattlers had won. And Danny White called me up and goes, Doug, how would you like to be our defense coordinator? And I said, why? He goes, because our defense coordinator gave up 65 points tonight, and I think we can do better than that. Do you want the job? And I thought, well, what do I have to lose? I mean, I'm the broadcaster, the color analyst. I go, okay, I'll do it. So I just finished a couple games that year, but then I came back and did it. It was just great being with Danny. I mean, Danny was a winner. He had a lot of creativity with his play calling selections. And so, you know, I got to be like, we went to 3 Arena Bowls when I was there with Danny White. And, you know, I started thinking, how can I transfer this knowledge that I have to players? So at first I wasn't very good at it. But, you know, a lot of times I would take those guys, you know, off to the side and really just give them a little pep talk, just like I would have wanted to do. You know, I loved it when a coach came over and goes, Doug, you didn't do that right. He goes, but I loved your effort. You know, I always called it the criticism sandwich. What is the criticism sandwich? You compliment a player, you criticize him, and then you compliment him. So when when you're done walking away from him, he goes, I don't know, he just complimented me, but I feel like he just yelled at me too. So it was a positive attitude though. When I was done talking to those players, they went, man, let's go. Let's bring on next play. It wasn't like I was like so many of these coaches today. You blah, 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 blah. You know what? That doesn't get you anywhere. That gets you disconnected with the players. You have to let them think, hey, listen, I've been through the same thing you're going through right now. And give him a story or a background. You know what? It cuts through all the baloney. They go, okay, I got it, coach. I got it. And, you know, usually I could tell you almost 100% of the time, that player would never make that mistake again. And they would give me so much effort. You know, you don't realize how much these games are won on effort. That little bit of extra effort to strip the ball, to make the catch, to make the tackle, that's the difference between winning and losing. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I got those players right up to that edge. I knew that I felt like they were playing at the best of their ability. And, you know, the other thing is you can recover from physical mistakes. Mental mistakes are going to beat you faster than anything else. Going the wrong way, missing a tackle, you know, calling the wrong defense, all those sort of things. So it's more mental than it is even physical. And like you can trace what happens in big plays back to those situations where somebody went the wrong way.
Mm-hmm. So when you transition into coaching and then transition indoors, I guess, kind of speak to that transition of, comparing NFL style to when you're coaching arena style and how you are, adjusting to the arena style game itself and then coaching it.
Well, it's pretty hard on defense, though, because it's hard to see your defense giving up 30, 40, 50, 60 points in a game. But you know what, though? This is a smaller field. It's cut in half. It's not as wide. You have some advantages that you don't have as much ground to cover. You can hit those receivers coming around in motion. Back when I was coming into the league as a coach, I always tried to push the rules right to the limit. And in the rule book, if you remember arena football has the guy come around in motion, and he never stops, and he comes right to the line of scrimmage. Well, when we were playing, no teams ever engaged him, coming around. And I thought, you know what? It's not a crime to hit him, but you were in man-to-man coverage almost the whole game. So if you missed that player, he was going to catch it and run for a touchdown. So what I would do is I would get my most athletic player I could in the secondary. Might not be the biggest and the strongest, but he was the fastest and he was very agile. So when those guys came around in motion, I would have him come up there and just cut the receivers at the line of scrimmage. So when they were coming up and were getting ready to pass the line of scrimmage, that safety or cornerback was running full speed at the receiver. And when him and the receiver got at the line of scrimmage, it was a big collision. The guy's legs would go back flying up in the air. He would usually land on his back. Nobody had ever done that in arena football. A rule was made during that game. I was called like a minute later over to the sidelines, and it was the commissioner of the Arena Football League. And he said, Doug, I never want to see you have another safety player hit that motion guy. You must let him go. Otherwise, you are going to get fined. Your owner's going to get fined, and you will get suspended during the game. I'm talking to the commissioner of the Arena Football League game. This is a national game that weekend. And I went, okay, don't just do the old catch and run program, which everybody else was doing. But I'm just telling you right now, wow, those receivers, you know what? I think they came to a decision real quick. We don't have enough receivers in this league that we can last with them getting chopped down every single time they come around here. Again, it was the most agile guy I had. He wasn't the biggest, wasn't a linebacker. He was a guy about 5'10", could run 4.5, 4.4, and he could get up there so fast, and he could change directions in a minute. And even when you're coming around and that guy's coming running at you, you're really not in the mood to do many changes directions. You got to get away from this guy because he's got a target on you like a submarine, and he's going to take your legs out. And that rule only existed for like one half until the commissioner called and said, I don't want you killing any more guys in motion. So but it was, it's hard too. It's hard walking off the field. Maybe you gave up 35 points and feel good about it. You still won the game. I'm going, man, oh man, 35 points. How did that happen? Well, a short field, and then, I really gave those guys a lot of credit though. That field was so much more dangerous in terms of falling on it, getting turf burns, getting contusions on your elbows. There was a lot more injuries. And if you go back and really look at arena football, the troubles that it had back in those days was that a lot of those players were getting injured, and they filed workers' compensation because there was a lot of them getting hurt, and they deserved more treatment, doctor treatment, during the week and even after the seasons were over. If you were a fraidy cat, please don't play arena football because you can't hide on that field anywhere. Because everybody's looking at you like, what are you doing over here? Get over there and get in that play. So it was, a lot of tough guys. I tell you, a lot of guys that could play football and sustain injuries at the same time.
Definitely. Ain't no running out of bounds and try to avoid contact.
No, there's none of that. I mean, I saw some of those guys hit those boards. Oh my gosh. It's like, It's all different because you played in the National Football League and, oh, you're a tough guy, Doug. Yeah, you did all this and blah, blah, blah. You know what? I don't know if I would have wanted to play arena football because I just saw some of the most incredible hits, full speed. It's one thing to go full speed into that sideline with a little foam on it. It's another thing to have another guy behind you, like a caboose, pushing you. So maybe he didn't have great coverage. Maybe he's coming up on your rear, and at the last second when you're getting ready to go catch that ball, he pushes you in the back. Now you're like a missile. You're a missile flying up into the stands.
Into the stand.
Yeah, I can't. I didn't understand why anybody that will watch that game wanted the first row seats. I go, nope, not me. I'm a coach. I don't want to be over there. Because I just saw some big old bodies go flying over that wall sometimes.
Mm-hmm. So when when you were at Georgia, you put together, well, Philly as well, but you had some great rosters. So how did you go about recruiting those players? What was kind of like your standard for the guys who you sought out?
It was hard at first because really I didn't know a lot of players in the league. Although I was a defense coordinator in Arizona with Danny White as the head coach, and Arthur Blank hired me. And so I went down there. I said, yeah, I'll do this. I think I can do it. I mean, I called defenses. I called the 46 defenses. I made changes and plays. And that was only for the line, though. I had played with another safety in Chicago, Gary Fensick, went to Yale. Smart guy. He just came in and he called all the coverages on that because one guy can't do the line stunts and call the coverages. There's a breakdown in communication. So he called the coverages. I would call the alignments and stunts we were going to do that time. And so it does matter, who you play with also, in terms of their ability to just digest everything. And I started learning at a really young age, though. Here's one thing I think is great about being a player and a coach. You understand what gets you motivated. You understand what feels good, what doesn't feel good. You don't want to ever be stood up in front of the whole team and say, Doug, why did you duck your head? Why did you not make that tackle? Why did you play it safe? Why didn't you go out of your way and knock that blocker down? I mean, you're called out in front of your whole teammates. Hey, I never wanted that to happen, ever. In fact, sometimes when I would get knocked down during a play, I'm going, oh, how is this going to look on film? I'm going, I got to get up. I got to get off the ground now. I have to get off the ground. I got to go hit somebody. I don't care if he's got the ball or not. It doesn't matter. I just want to hit somebody. So when that Monday morning came around, okay, I might have been on the ground for a short second. I started teaching myself how to, when I knew I'm flying through the air. Maybe I didn't see a blocker hit me. I think clipping was a lot more prevalent back then too. You could hit somebody from the side, really like an ear hole shot. That's technically clipping. But no, a lot of times officials wouldn't care, especially if you were like labeled as the cheap shot artist in the league. How do you like that, Doug? This guy's going to ear hole you. As you're flying through the air, you're thinking, I never saw that guy coming. But you know what? I started practicing on grass how, when I was flying through the air, to tuck my head and make it a rolling situation, almost like wrestling. I would get knocked off my feet, but instead of doing one of these things like the umbrella, oh my gosh, I'm flying through the air. No, I just tucked myself like a bowling ball, ducked my head like this and just rolled. I could roll over my back, boom, jump on my feet. When you saw it on film, it looked like it was something that was planned. Somebody hitting me, yeah, I'm going down. I'm only going to be on that ground for a second, though, because I'm not going to do the full slide like I'm coming into second base. No, this is going to be instantaneous. I'm going to be back on my feet making something happen.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So was it any different recruiting in Georgia than it was recruiting in Philly?
You know what? Not really. I mean, I think, here was one thing great about Atlanta, too, with the Georgia Force. They were owned by Arthur Blank. And, just a great man, a lot of accomplishments in his life. But he most important thing was he owned the Falcons. And if you thought there was any way I can go from arena football over here to the National Football League, guess what? You're going to do it. You're going to go to those teams. You know, a lot of other teams in the league too also had NFL ownership. And I'm just surprised more players, and there were some that made the transition from arena to the NFL. Some of them were not as, fruitful. Other ones were. It really depended on what position you were. I'll just say this for toughness, though. If you were just wanting somebody that was a tough guy, didn't mind running into walls, didn't mind running on AstroTurf his whole life, arena football is somebody you can take off that field. Chris Horn was another player that played for us with the Arizona Rattlers. Very versatile, had a great career with the Kansas City Chiefs. It just goes right on down the line. What I thought was probably the best position to learn from in arena football was being a quarterback. I mean, come on. You go back to you have to be a tough guy because you're going to get hit. And the other thing is you got to read defenses fast because those guys are on top of you like nobody's business. And I just think there were some outstanding quarterbacks, in the NFL that were in the Arena Football League that I was fortunate enough to, in their broadcast games, I just said, this guy is going somewhere. They were smart. They were quick, fast release. You could see them. They had great camaraderie too, as far as talking to the other players. They were good speakers, in terms of just motivation on teams. I got a chance to meet them my first 2 years because I was broadcasting. That was a lot more personal. It's hard to be a personal guy when you're a broadcaster. You don't really talk to the players. You maybe talk to their fans, but it was. So I did it all. I mean, I played. I was a broadcaster. I was a coach, a head coach, a defensive coordinator. But you know what? I loved every play. Every year it was fun. It was a new challenge, and and it was really fun if you could teach somebody something that was unique, either a way to tackle somebody or maybe an injury you had and what worked as far as treatment was concerned. Any of those little things that you thought were insignificant were not really insignificant, because when you were talking to players they were walking the same shoes you were, that same walk that you had done just a few years earlier.
Mm-hmm. What does the Coach of the Year awards mean to you?
You know what? It was really unexpected. I never really expected to come from like the NFL and then get a Coach of the Year award. It was very humbling too. There was a lot of other great coaches. Most times that they do that on what was your record the year before and then what was it this year? What was the differential in terms of winning games? I really felt like there were some other coaches in the league that were just as deserving. Maybe maybe it wasn't a 5 or 6 game differential between what you had done the year before and then what the next year was in terms of wins and losses. Like maybe 6 games you lost the year before, and now you won them. Now your record looks great. But there's a lot of coaches out there that did incredible jobs of making their teams better. And you know what? Here's the other thing that really, is the intangibles. Like, we all watch a game sometimes and the ball hits the ground or whatever. It bounces off a player and it's right there. All they had to do was catch it and run for a touchdown and win the league, be the Arena Bowl champion. Same thing with the NFL. Oh, they get tripped somehow. They go back to pass and they get their foot stuck in the turf and they fall down. It's things like that, turnovers that are crazy, but they impact the game. And so even though you were given some sort of an award, I can think of 2 or 3 coaches back then that I thought, man, I thought they were going to get it because they were doing an outstanding job like they had done the year before. Now, what's wrong with doing a great job 2 or 3 years in a row and you don't get anything? And here's a guy over here that was in the last place team and now he got it over 500. He gets the trophy. Why didn't you give it to me? Our team was in the playoffs in the division. We won our conference and all that. It's very subjective. And when you're picking out all those awards, and I know you have to agree with me, there's times you're going, I can't believe this other guy didn't get it because he was so deserving of it. But, you know, when you're getting something like that, you're not going to make an argument. You're just going to shake your head and go, yeah, that was great. I really deserved it. Thank you. Come on, give it to me. Don't you have another one for next year?
Definitely. So, are there any lessons, that helped shape you as a player or as a coach along the way that you'd like to share?
I would try to, it all depends on what position you play. If you're a linebacker or a safety or cornerback on the defense, or on the offense, you're a running back or a receiver or a quarterback. I know this sounds like an old line. The people that are in front of you will make you look fantastic, great. When you have a defensive line that is choking the quarterback almost every play, they're running through offensive linemen like they're clowns, like they're scarecrows. They're sacking quarterbacks. They're shutting down the run. What do you have to do as a safety? I don't know. Hit them on the back. Good job, guys. Good job. What do you have to do if they're not good? They don't make tackles. They get blocked. There's no pressure on the quarterback. You go back there, you're supposed to only be in pass coverage 3 seconds, they say. The ball has to be in the air. 1001, 1002, 1003, unless it's a long ball. There were times in the secondary playing my first few years, 5 seconds, 6 seconds, 7 seconds, 8 seconds. You're back there running around covering guys, 2 or 3 guys at one time because the quarterback still has the ball. Well, on a good team, that doesn't happen. That guy goes down. That's why you got the steel curtain and all those great names for all those defensive lines. Green Bay Packers. I mean, wherever you go, the Patriots, they all had great pass rushes. I mean, they brought it. Their linebackers weren't 200-pounders that were running out to the flats. No, these guys were mean guys. They even look mean. You took their helmet off. You go, oh my gosh, put your helmet back on. You only got one tooth, and you're not smiling. One eye looks like black eye, or look like pirates almost. Jack Lambert. Yeah, Jack Lambert. My point is, those guys that are in front of you are going to make you who you are. You can be a very average running back, very average defensive back. You have a great line in front of you. Look out, man. I don't care. They're getting knocked down. It's easier to run by guys that are on the ground than guys that are coming up and getting ready to whack you. And you start looking at some of those sacks, like in the NFL and college. Sometimes, they miss a blitz call, for example. Not on defense, but on offense. Maybe the guy, instead of going out for a pass as a running back, he should check first and make sure nobody was coming on that side, on the outside. Because if you just say, I'm going to go out and run up for a pass, you're running by guys that are running at the quarterback. You're almost like going, what are you doing? You got to hit this guy. Your quarterback doesn't even have enough time to get rid of the ball. And you can look like a great player. You can be a great player. But if you got no line in front of you, you are going to you're going to look very average on television. Same thing with a quarterback. I watched a quarterback from the Bears a couple years ago, Justin Fields, and he was really athletic. He could run, he could pass, he could do all that stuff. His first game with the Chicago Bears, he gets sacked 8 times. Well, I'm not going to say he's the best quarterback in the league, but he could run, he could get away from people. You know what? How do you do that for 8 sacks in his first game? Something is wrong up front. And I don't care who you are. You get hit 8 times by linebackers and defensive linemen from the NFL. You don't feel good. You don't feel good. Those guys, even if they land on top of you, they don't even have to hit you. Just land on top of you. Look out. And so it all connects with each other. That's why it's not as easy as saying, oh, we're one guy away from being a great team. No, that's probably not you might be one coach away from being a great team because, coaches a lot of times, they don't want to call plays that are going to put them at risk. Like if the play doesn't work, all of a sudden, why did you call that play? I know that some of the criticism from some of the Detroit Lion coaches over the last couple of years, it doesn't matter whether it's like second or third and 1 or whatever, they'll throw a bomb. All the regular anticipation of what you think of what should happen in a game as a player, what is the usual play that is going to, they only got half a yard to go to pick up the first down or whatever. Like I said, and they throw a 50-yard bomb. Where does this come in at? It's like it shocks the defense. Though it shocks the defense, and so you want to have not only good talent, but you want to be very aggressive too on your play calling.
Definitely. So, what are you doing nowadays?
I was doing national radio last year for a station, Sports USA Media, and they did NFL games. I started out, they were doing NCAA and NFL games. But now, after my career was over, I went out and got a couple licenses. Again, a fast food license. I was 20 years with a national franchise company. That keeps you busy. You only have 2 days off, Thanksgiving and Christmas. It doesn't matter. Other 363 days, come, Doug, get down here as fast as you can. Get ready to put the mayonnaise, lettuce, tomato, pickle, ketchup, onion on that burger and serve it. So that's where I was. That's where I was at for like 12 years after I retired. But then, one day I just thought, I'm watching television, and I said, man, that coaching, that football, I forgot how much I loved football until after I was out of it. And I thought, when they asked me to be a broadcaster, I didn't even know anything about broadcasting. When they asked me to be a broadcaster for the Arena Football League, Arizona Rattlers, I thought, then you get to know the coaches. Now you know the players. I mean, it's almost like you're in the organization already. So when they hired me as a coach, Danny knew that I had a background as far as a football player because I hit him in the back a couple times on safety blitzes. And so it was fun. It was fun. It was fun interacting with all these players and coaches. And they knew that I had their back. I was going to try to help them out as best I could from my experience. And so it was one of those things, who you're networking to makes a difference. The better you are at networking, calling people on the phone, things like that. Or here's the other thing, better than networking, win your division, your game, your league, your conference. You do that, oh my gosh, the bright lights come on you. And that's how I got to Atlanta. Arthur Blank said, you guys played in the Arena Bowl last year and lost on the last series or last drive. I would like you to be our coach, our head coach. So I just tried to adopt a lot of things that Danny White had done. And this is a copycat business. I don't care what you say. The other innovative thing, the only innovative thing I saw in football when I was there with the Bears, 46 defense. I'd never seen a safety come up, play middle linebacker, and attack like that. Every play was attack. And we always, here's what we called it, looking for Susie. Who is the weakest lineman on that team? Who's the weakest blocker? Maybe the heaviest guy. He doesn't move around very fast. He's not going to pull. We would pick on him, and we would call plays the entire game that went right up through him, and we wanted to tire him out, and we looked at him like a punching bag. If he was going to grab somebody, no, we were going to hit him right in the waist, or chop his legs down. Now you can't do that. If you're a defender, you can't go into an offensive player who's blocking and chop his legs down. You could when I was there. And you know what? The next time you ran by him, he wasn't as anxious to hit you because you know what? He knew you could take him out at any moment. And I mean, it sounds crazy. It's like survival. And you guys know this. I mean, you get the whack hit. You get hit in the side of the head, start seeing blood and everything coming out, blood, broken noses. There was a reason why I had that third bar, in my helmet. Because I get my nose broke so many times, forearms coming in. I wanted something to at least have a chance. I got a whole bunch of artificial teeth right now because you know why? I would slam my mouth together so hard, even with the mouthpiece. It didn't matter, man. After plays, I'm going spitting out teeth or parts of teeth. I mean. It's not for the faint of heart. You have to be willing to give and get punishment.
So I don't want to hold you up too much, but always in kind of closing, I give you guys a chance to kind of give any advice to, any players that are out there looking to play, or just anybody who you can think of along this football journey that needs some advice from you.
I just think, you have to believe in yourself, and you really, sometimes it's hard to believe in yourself because maybe things didn't go that way. But you know what? When I say give yourself a chance, every level that I was at, I always tried to improve my strength. Now, in high school, you were on your own. If you wanted to bench press, you could bench press. If you wanted to squat, you could squat. You could do power cleans with dumbbells. That's okay. Nobody told you what to do. So you're doing all this on your own. You get to college, I thought it would be much more extensive. We only had one universal machine at Ohio State. So weightlifting wasn't a big deal there. This is all by the coaches now. The coaches, if the coaches don't feel like you have to be I remember Nebraska back then was like the king of college weightlifting programs. Yeah. All those dudes would come out on the field. Oh my gosh, they're big. They're bench pressing 400 pounds. They're squatting 1,000. I mean, these guys were tough and they were big and strong. You know what? They were best in the fourth quarter. They never got tired. When I got to the Chicago Bears, fortunately, we had an Olympic weight coach on that program, on the staff, Clyde Emmerich. Taught me how to do dumbbell cleans with 100-pound dumbbells. Go grab a 100-pound dumbbell. Now, why would you do that? Do you realize in football, everything begins with your hands on the opponent, the hands on, the offensive players on the defensive players. The stronger you can be through your hands and grabbing a hold and pushing players around, or grabbing them around the thighs. I'm just thinking of Earl Campbell right now. That guy was a beast. He was a railroad train. Don't get on the tracks, man. He'll run you over so hard, you won't even know what hit you. I studied film. I came up one time, made a tackle on him, and he wasn't expecting it because I hit him in a place where he wasn't used. There was no pads. And it was between his legs, and you can figure out where I hit him. It was higher than the knees. And because I had seen him knock a safety out the week before from Denver Broncos, and I thought that's not going to happen to me. I'm not going to hit his thigh. I'm going right for the middle, just like a torpedo. And still, I didn't knock him. He went out of the game for almost a half, but he came back and still ran over 100 yards. I mean, the guy was tough. I mean, but you know what? Unfortunately, this game takes tolls, and there's a lot of damage that's done to your body. And especially a guy like that ran the ball a lot and got hit so often. I don't know him personally, but somebody told me that, he was suffering, with some of the injuries that he incurred when he was playing. And, this is like a banana. You ever get a banana? The banana looks good till you peel it apart. You go, oh my gosh, what happened to this banana? Somebody was stepping on it. Inside the skin on the banana is like all these brown and black spots, and like, oh my gosh, what happened here? Well, somebody tramped on it, beat it up. That's a body. That's a body in the NFL during the season anyway. But I learned how to lift weights, become a lot stronger. They helped me do things that I could never do before, make tackles against the Earl Campbells of the world. And you know what? Even when I did get injured, like during the year, my recovery was really fast, because I was working on those muscles, stretching, flexible, all those sort of things all year long. So, I admire it. It's a great sport. I think it really challenges people to be able to just give 100% every single time. But I think even more than anything else, I've never seen anybody really run around the field with a big smile on their face. This is a game that just requires attention and determination. And it doesn't hurt to have like a little chip on your shoulder, like, hey, that guy hit me last play. He clipped me. Well, there was nothing called, or, he cut you from the side or whatever. There's always a reason to say, I want to play harder. I want to play faster. Maybe it was the last time you guys maybe played these guys, maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago. Somebody did something at the end of the game that, you were going to even the score. So I always went out there playing. I didn't have a smile on my face. I mean, I wasn't frowning or anything. I just knew what was coming.
Mm-hmm. All right. So appreciate you coming on and sharing your story and and adding in some of the stories here and there. Like I said, it's great for people who don't necessarily know your story. They don't necessarily know parts of your journey. So, I definitely was excited to have you on. Like I said, you're one of the Chicago Bear greats, and that's my squad. So it's definitely great to hear your stories and have you come on and take your time and speak with me.
You know what? I to all those people out there, I just say, you know what? You can do it. Don't let that first disappointment, that first failure affect your attitude or your effort. You know what? It's happened to everybody. So you're in a group of people that have already done whatever you've done in terms of mistakes, errors, went the wrong direction, went the wrong way, whatever. And just think of it as one step. And there's always going to be adversity. And I think the really, really great players in any league are those that can overcome that adversity mentally and physically and come back out and say, hey, no, I'm back. I'm back again. And watch out. I'm smarter, stronger, and more determined this time.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. So, again, appreciate you coming on. And you're going to hang out a little bit. We'll sign off, but just hang out for a little bit. And definitely, appreciate your time. And, I'd love to speak with you further. And if anything I can do for you, let me know.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Like I said, if I could just help one person learn something from this, I feel better. I mean, there's nothing like talking to people that were younger than you, that you encouraged them and you motivated them to go on to the next step, even though they didn't maybe feel it, but they did it and they just stuck with it and kept the focus in mind where they wanted to go. And you got to dream. You got to dream and say, I'm going to get there. And you got to talk to yourself. I mean, people go, who are you talking to, Doug? I go, I talk to myself all day long. I just say, you got to work harder, faster, get here sooner. And it worked. And it can work for somebody else.
Mm-hmm, definitely. So, yeah, I know people are going to take those lessons and they're going to put those lessons in action. So,
absolutely.
All right. Well, again, appreciate you coming on, and definitely we'll be in touch.
Okay. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you having me on the show.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you.